With IVF and Planned Parenthood making national headlines, new polling from RealClear Opinion Research and EWTN shows not only political divisions, but significant disagreement among Catholics themselves on key pro-life issues. The numbers released last week show Catholics are fairly united when it comes to Planned Parenthood. 44% say they strongly favor or somewhat favor eliminating federal funding for the nation's largest abortion provider. Only 17% say they strongly oppose cutting that funding. But the big surprise came with IVF. Despite clear church teaching that in vitro fertilization is morally illicit, when first asked about IVF, 53.5% of Catholics say they support access to the procedure, and just 18.8% say they oppose it. When informed that the Catholic Church strongly opposes IVF and why, 44.5% said they still supported access. But opposition increased by more than 5 points, with 24.1% saying they were now against it. The poll reveals a widening gap between church teaching and what many Catholics believe, especially on IVF. And it suggests a need for more education about the risks and dangers of IVF, especially as the 2026 midterm elections approach. In Illinois, the Democrat governor signs a bill to legalize physician-assisted suicide. On December 12th, the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe, J.B. Pritzker signed the End-of-Life Options for Terminally Ill Patients Act. This authorizes medical aid in dying for terminally ill adults in Illinois. Pope Leo XIV's home state now joins 11 other states and Washington, D.C. that have access to physician-assisted suicide. Former NFL quarterback Tom Brady is back in the news. He's gone from football to fetch. The 7-time Super Bowl champion recently revealed his new dog is actually a clone of his previous one. The procedure is slowly becoming more common among ordinary pet owners. It costs between $50,000 and $85,000. The process involves collecting a small tissue sample from an animal and using it to create a genetically identical embryo that is then implanted into a surrogate mother. Does the Catholic Church have guidance on this practice? For that answer, we turn to Dr. Joseph Meaney, past president and senior fellow of the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Dr. Meaney, it's great to be with you. We have a lot to unpack, including the RealClear poll numbers and the disturbing news out of Illinois. But first, how and why did the cloning of animals begin, and how widespread is it?
Cloning was Dolly the sheep back in 1996. Since then, they've been able to clone many animals. It's actually a pretty common practice. There's actually a group that's trying to clone animals that are nearing endangered species status, even extinct species, bring them back through the process of cloning. So this is definitely where science is at these days.
And does the Catholic Church have any teachings on the cloning of animals?
So from a Catholic perspective, the dignity of animals, of course, is much lower than the dignity of human beings. And so it's not per se immoral to clone an animal. However, there are other considerations that do have to be taken into account, ethical problems associated with it, including the fact that many animals die because of cloning. Many animals are harmed by it. There's a lot of genetic anomalies that occur during the cloning process. Just as with IVF, right? There are a lot of embryos that die in the cloning process. So, and also the cost is enormous. Mm-hmm. So, in some sense, it's like, when we're looking at the common good, is it really justifiable to clone an animal when you could use that money to do so many other good things? I think that's probably the main objection.
I see. And switching gears now, the findings from RealClear Opinion Research about the faithful and in vitro fertilization. What is your take on these numbers, and did anything surprise you?
So I was very happy to see that once people knew what the Catholic Church taught, then there was a big switch, right? A big swing in the proper direction. But I think that's my experience. The more people learn about IVF, the more they realize how terrible it is. And I think what really enables IVF to be popular is the fact that there's a lot of ignorance about it. So the more education that happens, and also to figure out that there are alternatives, because people think, oh, well, we need IVF because couples suffer from infertility. But of course, there's restorative reproductive medicine, which is extremely ethical, extremely effective, and much less expensive. So there's, really no alternative that is more attractive than restorative reproductive medicine, because IVF is just terrible from a moral perspective, but also from a medical perspective.
I think you're exactly right. And do you have any practical recommendations that you would give church leaders on how exactly to educate the public?
Yeah, I think marriage preparation is a very important time to talk to couples because, it's the time when they're being told about fertility awareness-based methods. It's the time where they're being told about being open to life, but they also be told that, infertility is a fact for 1 in 6 couples. And so what happens if you do suffer from infertility? Well, there are very good ethical ways to help overcome that. And so I think the church could do a lot in marriage preparation that is not being done currently.
And quickly, the news out of Illinois that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed a measure to legalize physician-assisted suicide. What do you make of this, and where do you see this trend going?
I think it's extremely tragic that the vulnerable are being encouraged to commit suicide. Many disability rights groups talk about the fact that if you're young and healthy, you get suicide prevention. But if you have a handicap, you're elderly, you're sick, you get suicide promotion. And this is a part of a trend. I think there's a kind of a culture of death attitude that some people's lives are not worth living, and we should help them to kill themselves or just simply kill them, right? Euthanasia. But it's really tragic, and it goes deeply to this utilitarian view of the human person as opposed to the dignity of the human person.
Man. Well, Dr. Meaney, thank you so much for being with us today.
That's a great pleasure.